And the next gentleman here, I always joke because I see him 8,000 miles from here more than I do right here in Novo. He's my neighbor, but I have to go to Cannes in the south of France to see this guy. He's a producer, he's a writer. We go back 20-some years, and incredible spirit. We love what he brings to the table. He's a writer-producer involved with the development of a lot of great talent all over the world. Please give a warm IES welcome to Shelley Sondheim. And last but not least, my new friend here. We just did a little event out in Vegas a month ago, and I said, that is the kind of guy we need at IES. We're all about the independent spirit of taking great talent. We call it being majorly independent. You know, everybody's like, oh, I want a major deal, I want to be on the major radio station. Well, guess what? Being majorly independent, you can be successful in a lot of ways, and we're going to talk about that. Like I loved what Steve Lobel, he talks to a lot of schools, and he asks the kids, do you want to be famous or do you want to be successful? And too many of these young people want to be famous. And you happen to know, and we're going to be talking about it all day, a lot of these artists, like a Joe Bonamassa or Tech Nine, a lot of people are like, who is that? Are actually receiving more royalties and are more financially and creatively successful than a lot of these pop stars and rock bands you see on major labels with a quote platinum record or a hit. They might not be seeing any royalties yet. They are unrecouped. And this young guy with 50,000 sold is now in control of his own destiny. He has a staff of powerful people running a global operation. And that's what Jesse is involved in. Formerly with EMI, he signed such artists and brought them in to a dynamic new independent fold, which is coming from the majors. They still have major distribution, they have access to major services, but they own their own masters and copyrights. They're in control of their own destinies, and they're going to see a profit a whole lot sooner. Among the artists that he signed, Ice Cube, Raekwon from Wu-Tang Clan, Fat Joe, Bobby V, a whole lot of people that we'll talk about. Right now he's going to announce a very exciting venture he just signed last week, and we're so proud to have him here at IES to talk about opportunities for independent artists and labels. Would you please give a warm IES welcome to Jesse Flores. So again, let's get right into it. Rich, why don't you start it off and talk a little bit about what you're seeing as far as the old traditional deals and what some of the new hybrids and new opportunities that people are kind of bucking the system and creating their own lanes.
Well, hello? There are several. I think the thing to remember is that the old deals were with traditional record. Can you all hear me? Yeah. Okay. That the old deals were with traditional record companies, and that is because they controlled the landscape. You wanted music out there, you had to go through them to actually get heard. That is not a reality today. Today, we all live in a culture, and you all know this, I don't need to tell you, where we have infinite choice. We have infinite choice. It's why the major labels have lost their power. It's why radio stations have lost their power. Okay? We have something now called Sirius XM. We have something now called Internet Radio. We now have infinite choice. Okay? And what that has done to the music business, specifically to Jay's point, is that it has created a landscape whereby you don't need to be part of the traditional, big label kind of operation. I just want to add something to what you were saying about, the sad reality about most famous artists today is that we live in a world where there's no more payoff for their big hits other than fame. That's the sad reality. 10, 15 years ago, when you had a really big hit, you had really big album sales, and you sold a shitload of records, albums. There's no payoff today. I'll give you an example. Katy Perry, she achieved something that no one has achieved in the history of the record business other than Michael Jackson. And that was that she had 5 #1 hit singles off of one album. Only one person in history ever did that, and that was Michael on the Bad album. The difference was that when Michael hit the 5th #1 on Bad, he was at 10 million albums sold, which is commensurate with having 5 #1 hits on one album. When Katy Perry hit the 5th #1 hit single off of her last album, she was at 1.9 million. That's what I meant, and that's like as good as it gets, folks. There's nobody that's had 5 #1 hits. There's no more payoff other than the fame. So to address...
Rich, but I think, is this mic on?
I don't know.
You know, with Katy Perry, I think EMI probably spent over $20 million to sell 2 million albums. Do the math.
Yeah.
That to me is not successful.
No, and you know, they hopefully will make money on other areas. The problem is that with most artists today, the other areas don't necessarily always pan out. I mean, it's a proven fact that the majority of the people on the Hot 100 today, the American public has very, very little interest to see them live. That's a fact. I'm not making that up. Very, very little interest. Flo Rida, here's an example of somebody who has sold millions of singles. He can't sell a ticket live to save his life. I mean, that's just a fact. I'm not making this up. It goes on and on and on. Many of these people that have huge hits, there's no desire. It's one thing to pay 99 cents to see somebody live. I mean, to buy a record. It's quite another to pay 40 or 50 bucks to see them in concert. There's a disconnect. So when you talk about the new kinds of deals, he mentioned Joe Bonamassa. The thing that these people have done, which is fascinating, is that they have built an audience, a live audience that desires to see them live. That is independent of whether they have a hit record or not. And many of these people, you don't know their name, you don't have it. That's what I think is the biggest difference today, is how we define success. We used to define it as massive hits, big album sales, big tours, MTV. Now it's defined as, can I make a living doing this? And I have met more people, and I know Jay has too, in the last 5 years, of artists and bands who are actually making livings, decent livings, okay? Maybe not fortunes, and maybe they're not famous, but decent livings doing music and nothing else. So when you look at the traditional deal of signing up with a company for 7 years, giving all of your rights away, having them own 30% of your touring, 30% of your merchandise, 30% of your endorsements, you know, a publishing deal that takes 50% of your publishing, so on and so forth. You know, what are you getting in return for that? Fame? You know, the major labels right now, it may change, right now are only good if you're a pop artist that needs a big machine behind you. But if you're not that, they don't have the ability to break artists in other fields. They simply don't. So, when you look at what kinds of deals are out there, you have a lot of things like brands. You have things like 7-Up and Red Bull and all kinds of different organizations and major brands in the marketplace that are signing talent. Do you know, I think it's Converse? I believe it's Converse, the shoemaker, has a recording studio, a $3.5 million recording studio in Brooklyn, where people can record for free. Now, the trade-off is that you have to allow them to use any of the music that you recorded there. You keep your music, you keep the rights, but they have the right to use their music, use your music in perhaps marketing of their shoes, okay? But you get to record in a world-class recording facility totally for free, okay? But you get to keep and own your masters, own your publishing, own your... They're not in that business, okay? So my point is that there's many deals like that. You know,
as a matter of fact, Rich, the group AWOL Nation,
right,
with the big alternative hit, they just co-headlined Sunset Strip Music Festival. 30,000 people last Saturday is on Red Bull Records.
Right, which is and Red Bull gives a lot of support to their events in terms of marketing, in terms of Red Bull, you know, things that are happening around the country. I know Converse does that. I know, you know, big
Mountain Dew.
Mountain Dew has a label which does that. Who is it down in Nashville? The big electronics manufacturer, either Pioneer or one of them, has just set up a record division where they're doing the same kind of thing, looking for talent. So to address it, there's all kinds of opportunities as far as deals go where you don't have to necessarily be with a record company. They're not the only opportunity to market music anymore. There are people out there with far bigger reaches than just, you know, record companies. If you get into a commercial for Converse, you've got maybe a $25 or $30 million campaign on television with your song in it behind that, or an Apple commercial. That's nothing a record company could ever employ.
Yeah, matter of fact, after Macklemore hit #1 with Thrift Shop, his first single ever released went #1. He did a deal with Microsoft, and to set up his second single, Can't Hold Us, it absolutely was on every TV station all day long and set up the rise to have his second #1 in a row.
with that commercial.
Yeah, his third single, with the niche of Same Love having to coincide with, of course, the gay rights marriage and all the activity in the social world. I mean, it went through the roof. 3 singles, he didn't have to pay for the third single, went top of the charts on alternative. So,
right.
Again, it was a great example how Microsoft actually helped Macklemore go #1 on his second, because no one wants to be a one-hit wonder, which everybody was primed and ready to call him after Thrift Shop, and he's obliterated that conversation.
But what he's also done, Jay, is interesting. He's done something else. He's built a name for himself in the live business. He's performing at 7,000 to 7,500 seat venues. If you've never been to the Universal Amphitheater or the Nokia, that's about the size of it. Nokia is 7,100 seats.
Well, so a matter of fact, a little news, and we'll be talking about this later. Macklemore just put on 2 arena shows for sale in Seattle. They sold out in 15 minutes. And you're first to hear it. They haven't announced it, but Macklemore tickets go on sale for Staples Center shortly. An independent artist with no record deal is going to sell out the Staples Center, the biggest venue in Southern California.
Yeah, he is, and he did a very interesting thing. If any of you know his album, he even has a song on the album.
Jimmy Ivy.
Yeah, the Jimmy Ivy thing. Who offered?
Jimmy's offered to be in the video. Jimmy is a great fan of that,
yeah.
And even though some people take it as a diss, because he's talking about meeting with a major label and getting the bad vibe, like, wow, this doesn't feel like the art that I want to make. And Jimmy's been around long enough that he can chuckle at it and say, let me know when you want me to be in the video. I'm about to step away from Interscope anyway, the company I started, and be full-time at Beats. So, more power to the indies. Beats is another one. They're probably going to be signing artists, developing artists through this streaming service that they're doing.
Yeah, they are. He's developing the whole, I think it's called Daisy, which is
that's the code name, but from what I hear, it's going to be called Beats.
Oh, okay, so they're going to combine it. So anyway, I mean, that's another kind of deal where you tie in, again, with the brand. Because they have marketing vehicles, they have ways of reaching. I was listening to, on the way over here this morning, I was speaking of different vehicles, I was listening to NPR, and they were talking about President Obama, that in the last week, he has given, I think, they said 7 interviews to all non-traditional media outlets that weren't part of the so-called traditional mainstream journalistic element. He gave one to Amazon. He gave one to Zillow, the huge real estate portal. He gave one to Instagram. He gave his first Instagram. It's like a half-hour interview to Instagram. And the idea is that, you're able to reach, because we all live in a niche world now. I think the most challenging aspect that we all face in this room, as a marketer, as a label, is the ability to get people's attention. That's the hardest thing to do. The hardest thing to do. I'm convinced of that. So when you look at kind of the different kinds of ways to do it, talking about alternatives, brands, I think, are a perfect way to do it.
Yeah. And we're going to get to Shelley in a second, but Jesse, I just wanted you to continue on this. When you really break down what is a record deal or what does a record company do traditionally, and you can see how this can be done independently, I want Jesse to talk about this, because besides producing the music, of course writing it comes first, but producing the music, manufacturing, distribution, marketing and promotion, and a little bit of administration, these are all the functions a record company ever did. There's no magic wand or fairy dust or anything. Jesse, why don't you break that down, and where a lot of these once major label artists are now able to handle all those functions independently and make more, be in control of their own destiny, and own their own masters.
Sure. So if you're an artist and you already have a fan base, you've had releases out in the market before, you really don't need a traditional label anymore. As my fellow panelists were saying, you could put your team together and really find the right people to work your project that believe in you, that are committed. And it's really a thorough process. You have to be really in-depth as to who you pick as your partners. The first one you want to have is a distributor. You want to find the right distributor for your project, depending on the genre of music you are and what you're trying to do, whether you need digital, whether you need physical. It really helps. And then you want to look at what other services they offer. Some distributors nowadays, they incorporate marketing services with their label partners. So for a fee, you can have Capitol Records, promote your project through panel radio promotion, product management, online marketing, mechanical payments, some of the back-end services. The other thing you need is a strong attorney, someone that's going to fight for you and really, you know, put deals together that make sense. Same thing, publicists. That could be a service that a major offers you, or you can handle on your own, have your own indie. These are things you gotta want to weigh, because you gotta realize that at indies, at a major label, and also at a distributor, they're working several projects. And the reality is, 10 years ago, you know, there were 2-3 people doing the same job these guys are doing, and they're really strapped. You know, you want to make sure that you're a priority. So in that case, you want to say, okay, you know, does it make sense for me to go to a distributor and put my career in their hands, or, you know, handle this on my own and put my own team together? So that's definitely a key part of it. And then after you put that together, you really got to sit there and say, okay, what's the plan going forward? Every week, you know, we need to have a team meeting, brainstorming, you know, kind of going through all the action items and making someone accountable and saying, hey, you know, this falls in your lap. You need to make sure that you follow through and come through on this, because it's all part of the plan. To be successful, you got to have everything come together to really, you know, make everything come to fruition. It's definitely a hard job. You know, there's artists out there that are established, that are named artists, that are selling, you know, a couple thousand units a week. Case in point is someone like Shantae Moore. Anybody over 30 years old that's an R&B fan knows who Shantae Moore is. She's got nationwide exposure on R&B Divas, a TV1 show. And you would think that she'd sell records. Well, she just had a record come out this past week and it sold 2,500 units. You know, back in the day, yeah, it would easily be at least 25,000 on up. But it's all about exposure. You know, I haven't heard a song on radio. Radio is still the #1 driver out there for sales, especially for that type of artist. So it really just depends, man. You gotta really, you know, have a strong team and be dedicated and stay through it for the long run.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Joe, the R&B artist Joe. He is doing massive independent business, steady. I think he's almost coming out with an album every 9 months now, because a lot of people like E40, and we'll talk about him today, is they've realized that if you have a core audience, and it might only be 100, 200,000, but they're very loyal, they'll buy an album every time you put it out. You don't have to wait the traditional 2 or 3 years. E40 bucked the system. He was signed to Warner Brothers through the Little John deal 3 years ago. Now, independently through Brian Shafton and RBC, which you'll be meeting later today, he put out 3 albums in one day, and turned around a few months later, put out 2 albums on a day with Too Short, and he's about to release 3 more. And he's found this niche where his fans can't get enough. That's 60 songs. That's 3 albums with 20 songs. 60 songs in a day, and most of his fans will go buy all 3 of them. And they're not caring about a hit on the radio. They love his music. They're going to go see him live when he comes. He's doing massive business. He's probably doing 20 times the business now independently than he was on Warner 3 years ago. Shelley, why don't you talk a little bit about the fact that what this really comes down to is fans. As long as the consumer is buying the music, they don't care what label, what distributor, how they heard about it. As long as it connects, you know, with their heart and soul, has impacted them, it's really becoming more of a direct-to-fan business, and these pipelines and machines are just to help to increase that. Talk about that love for the music direct to the fans.
Certainly, certainly. I like to use the word clients instead of fans, because somehow with me, fans, it's a little authoritarian. It's a little, I'm up here and you're worshiping me. So I look at the fan base really as a client base, just like I want to build my clients. And when in that space and that frame of mind, it's about servicing clients as well, you know, and really making clients happy, because clients hire you, clients pay, and clients tell other people to become your client. So that's my, you know, take on the fan. I want to interject and praise a great group of music entrepreneurs, music dealers based out of Chicago, but now a worldwide group, very good friends of mine, who are also very involved in all of what Rich and Jay are talking about with regard to brands and bands. And you can contact music dealers through their site. Eric is their chief. JJ, his brother, is one of the chiefs. John, they're all very accessible. Dan Kuipers, they're all very accessible folks, and they're very tied in with Coke. Coca-Cola has become their major partner. So they've been appearing at all of the international events, and they're just doing a tremendous amount of great work, getting artists paid, getting artists opportunities, operating in their own independent way. So what I'd like to do in terms of what I have to contribute is first ask, you know, everybody is an attendee of IES, and it's all about answering your questions. So I don't want it to be so much our panel of just speaking at you. Please, if there are things that you'd like to know that we can share, our perspective or our advice or specifically our contacts in a way to help you with your careers, we need to see some hands and we need you to be interactive. So that's absolutely first and foremost. So
yeah, we're going to take questions in a few minutes.
In a few minutes, what I'd like to do is contribute 3 basic points, okay? Which is why Jay had asked me to come to IES. Number 1 is that he said he sees me out and about around the world. So I'd like to share with you that my view of building clients and having a career. I'm a songwriter, music producer, music business entrepreneur. Graduated Berklee College of Music, guitar player, session guy, touring guy, but became songwriter producer. And one of the keys for me to grow my business and to find clients was to step out of North Hollywood. I love it here. I've lived here for 25 years, grew up in LA, but I got on a plane and I saw Jay at the Meetum event in the south of France. That's what he was referring to. Started traveling to Berlin to go to PopCon, the Amsterdam dance event. Started attending all of the seminars, music business seminars around the world, because I felt for sure, since everybody's saying no to me on Sunset Boulevard right now, there's got to be a Britney Spears and a Nickelback and a Christina Aguilera in Belgium, in the Netherlands, in Germany, in South Korea, and I'm going to go find them, and I'm going to convince them to hire me to work with them. That's what happened. 1 client became 3, 3 became 6, 6 became 12, and I can say for the last 13 years I've been running my business around the world with a substantial international group of clientele that are hiring me to write and produce songs. A lot of work in Eastern Europe, Kazakhstan, in Russia, Belize Republic of Georgia, and I saw something fantastic yesterday. I was watching Pensado's Place, which Dave Pensado, who's a super mixer, has his YouTube channel. Please go on to it, Pensado's Place. They're interviewing everybody, Ron Fair, and so I watched the interview with Harvey Mason Jr. Of the Underdogs, a producer who I admire and respect so much, and the company that I respect so much. And he was talking about his recent trip overseas. He said, the American brand is so strong, and our music and our perspectives and our standards and our quality and our innovation really influences the world. And truly, if you don't leave this country and go find out what I'm saying, you'll be surprised how strong this statement is. It's not in any way haughty or arrogant, but it's just really a truth. And I think that people like Jay and Rich, we've just met today, but those who I've seen out and around the world can really attest to what I'm saying. The American brand is very strong. So if you're a writer or an artist or a singer or a tech developer or a up-and-coming manager, you have no idea how powerful your brand and your perspectives are to people who are seeking this from Belarus and from Belgium and from, not that they're so far behind, it's just that we have a very high standard. So my first point that I wanted to make is really go global, that word. Get on a plane, go to a conference, do enough research so that when you drop into the UK, you're not just there for fish and chips, you're there for a week's worth of meetings and networking and client prospecting. So that's the first thing. The second thing I'd like to share with you is that here at IES, it's really all about empowering each person to succeed in their life with what they're doing, okay? So I have a job that I got as the Master Producer Artist in Residence at Columbia College in Chicago. I've been doing it for 3 years, and I get a chance to speak in front of a lot of young students who are about to graduate, right? And so my mantra has been success in your own lane. And it was said to me by my, an advisor, an attorney, very smart man, who said to me, Shelley, what you're about is creating success in your own lane. And I think that that's really important to reinforce and to motivate and to enthuse all of you that it's really about creating success in your own lane. That it has nothing to do with what other people are doing. It's your own success, your own career, the way you decide your career is going to be. And the third and final thing that I'd like to share about my perspectives of this is IES is about independence. And I think Ravi was saying that it's not so much the word independent. Again, I'm shifting like fan to clients. I say independent really is entrepreneur. We are all entrepreneurs. We all have the tools of technology. We have Pro Tools and Logic and Ableton Live and everything else. We have internet and we have there's no need to wonder if I'm going to get hooked up by somebody in the industry if I know Rich. I think I was one of Rich's first clients buying his directories. So he knows the whole industry. So this independent status that Jay has brought to this event and has helped to really empower everybody that has attended this event and the people who are speaking at this event is really about entrepreneurship. And it's about creating your own success in your lane and ideally globally, not just in your own city or your own backyard. So that's what I have to contribute. So far.
Thank you so much. Give it up for Shelley Sonai. I've always loved Shelley's spirit and the fact that, when you really look at it, fans are fans, sales are sales. It doesn't matter if it's Monrovia or Mongolia, it really doesn't matter. As long as it translates to US dollars, you are on your way to basically building a successful business. And again, like we broke down with Jesse, when you look at it, there's the production, your product, there's distribution, which is the availability of that product, whether digitally, physically, or mobile, and then there's the marketing, which is the exposure of that product, and that's what drives people to want to own the ticket or the download or the CD or the T-shirt or whatever it is you have. They're bundling things up right now, and one of the key guys that was starting to do a lot of that bundling is Ian Rogers over Topspin. Now, Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine have plucked Ian Rogers and say, we want you to run the new streaming service, and they've invested in Topspin. So we're seeing dynamic companies like that. You heard Ted Cohen speaking here day before yesterday about the dynamic opportunities. They're constantly evolving. And even though the tech press obviously focuses on Silicon Valley, 2-hour or 45-minute flight from here, you've really got LA now as the digital entertainment capital of the world. All the startups, like Beats, they're all out here, either in the valley or on the west side. And the entertainment and tech business is really based right here. That's why we have IES here. I'm sure some of you would love if it was in Memphis or Miami or Boston or Chicago. But it's right here. The caliber of speakers that we can bring to you are unable to, we go broke trying to fly them in and pay them and this and that. Our whole thing is to give you guys so much value. So for the little that it costs to come to IES, we want to give you guys multi-millions of dollars worth of information. And of course, it's up to you to do something with that. Like I said yesterday, two people can sit next to each other. This person takes notes, works the plan, has complete professional introduction when they come up and meet the speakers, and professional follow-up. And the other person they think they know it all, even though they're here, they're more worried about what's at the bar or who just walked in the door, and they go home forgetting half of what they learned the first day. A week later, they barely remember anything. They didn't follow up with anybody, they didn't make an impression with anyone, and to them, they're like, oh, that was okay. They sat right next to each other. So it's really in you to make this happen. And again, when we look at, the ultimate, who we all work for is our consumers. So whether we call them fans, clients, friends, associates, whatever you want to call them, it's the people that love what you do. You've impacted them with your art, your music, your voice, your lyrics, your moves, your whatever it is that's captivated them about you. You become a loyal consumer of what you do. We were talking about the difference between being famous and successful earlier. You look at some of these artists that are tremendously successful, Macklemore, Joe Bonamassa, Tech Nine, Mac Miller, a bunch of these guys going #1, killing it out there. And to a lot of people's minds, they are not famous. They're not famous. Well, Macklemore is definitely borderline on that now, but he's did it on his terms. We just saw him headline paid dues, 28,000 people. It was a multi-act bill with 5 stages, so it costs $100. That's 28,000 people times $100 average with great merchandising. Chang Weisberg, the producer of that event, was on our panel 2 days ago. This is an independent businessman who grossed over $4 million in one concert in one day. All independent artists. There was not one major label deal on the entire bill.
And
so that's what we're talking about.
One of the things I'd like to also share with our audience is that maybe not everybody's an artist. So what Jay is speaking about also applies to the writer-producer, and also applies to the aspiring Irving Azoff manager, or also applies to the aspiring Jimmy Iovine label Ron Fair kind of guy. So there are many different types of careers sitting in front of us. And so it's not just the artist about this, fame or making money. And I think I can speak very authoritatively on this because I'm not the most famous songwriter-producer you've ever met. Perhaps it should be Babyface, perhaps it could be David Foster, perhaps it could be L.A. Reid. There are a lot more famous people than I am as a writer-producer. That's absolutely for sure. But I kind of realized through my journey that not everybody's going to be famous. I learned along the way that not everybody is going to be famous, and I sort of made a decision that, well, fame is great, but working is better. And earning a living and having a business and having a career. So, everybody likes to win a prize. Everybody wants to win the lotto. Everybody wants to be the American Idol. And that's a normal human thing. But I think it's far more rich, far more rewarding to actually grow a business and have an identity and have roots that are yourself, and so you can say, hey, I've been at this, and even though I might not have the most famous song, I've got 15 clients who are hiring me to do sessions all around the world, and I kind of like that, so I want to share an inside tip too. I know a lot of famous people. I've been working in the music industry for quite some time, since I graduated Berklee College of Music. And a lot of the famous people that I know will be not jealous, but wondering, how are you getting a session at Neil Finn's studio in Auckland, New Zealand? Well, why are you working with Phil Collins in Geneva? They're famous and I'm not famous, and they're looking at my business as, that's a pretty successful business. So there's a little bit of a delusion, sometimes looking across the street at a neighbor's home and saying, I wonder how well they're really doing. So please don't in any way be disrupted by what fame can offer. And sometimes fame is actually the very thing that implodes your life. And we see that in examples of very famous people who don't seem to have the greatest life. I won't mention names because it's not about disrespecting people, but there are famous people that we're reading about that don't look like they're having a great day today. I would much rather have my day than that day of that famous person. Truthfully, I really would.
I want to add something to what Shelley's saying, which I think is very important, and that Jay has mentioned too, which is on Macklemore. The underlying element that has not been spoken here yet, which I have to commend every single person in this room on, is that Macklemore, I know this for a fact, took the time and the years to educate himself about the business that he wanted to be his life. That is, I cannot emphasize how important that is today from everything that we are speaking about. The artist that is going to be successful in the future is going to be someone who is educated about what that career is all about. I'm here to tell you right here and now, if you think that someone else, a manager, a friend, someone else is going to do that for you, you are delusional. And I mean that. I mean no disrespect, but that's what you have to get that, and that's what's not spoken about with the Macklemore situation. But I know
you have to take control of your destiny.
Yeah, and I know that he did, and I know that he learned because that's how he knew when a Jimmy Iovine, offered him the deal, that he wasn't dazzled by it, that he knew exactly what he wanted prior to going to Jimmy Iovine, because he was educated about what he wanted. All of those systems that in the past existed for artists and for bands, tour support and money to live on and infrastructure and, agents to get you gig, all of that has been destroyed by the new paradigm. It doesn't really exist for new up-and-coming talent. Talent used to be discovered down here. Now, talent has to be at this level, even to just get noticed. And I think anyone in this room who's an artist or an up-and-comer knows the journey between there and here is an awfully long time. And it's a lot of wisdom, it's a lot of education, it's a lot of self-knowledge. And that's what's important today. And I commend everyone in this room for giving the time, effort, energy, focus, and commitment to being here, to educating yourself, because that's what it's all about. That's what I've dedicated the last 30 years of my life to. Teaching, and I teach at MI, I teach at SAE, I've taught at UCLA. That's what it's about. And I think that in order for, I'm always saying that we're in the midst of a revolution, and I believe that in this business. We're in the midst of a radical revolution of, everything that we knew about this business is totally being reinvented. And if artists that are going to move forward and have a career do not realize that, and who are not with the reality of today, not what was, not what they would like it to be, but what is today, they will fall by the wayside. Look at the big companies. We had 6 major labels a decade ago. 6. Does anyone know how many we have now? No, 3. EMI was the 4th. When? Last September. It was sold to Universal. It's gone. We have 3.
Even Warner's not affiliated with the Warner conglomerate, so
no, but it's still considered a major.
2 conglomerates and one
mega. Yeah, and they're the smallest of the 3. So we've seen a contraction of 50% of just the major companies, and we've seen an expansion of the independent.
And I'm sure Sony would like to buy Universal or vice versa at some point.
Well, I don't think that's going to happen.
Can you imagine one major label?
I don't know if they would ever allow it, because they both are about equal now. Universal and Sony are about at the 40% mark. I know
it may be an absurd idea, but it's moving in that direction, obviously. I like to say in the 70s, there used to be a lot, when we got involved in the business, there was a lot of labels and very few artists. Now, there's a zillion artists and very few labels. So it's up to you to control your own destiny. Think of yourself as your own label, your own business, your own publisher, your own manager until you give those rights up to someone else, and don't be so quick to do so. Jesse, talk a little bit about that, how these independent artists, of course, we're in business for ourselves, but not by ourselves. How these independent artists are able to put these teams together and do what a major used to do.
Absolutely. I mean, a case in point, I want to give you guys a success story. I know I talked about Shantae Moore earlier, but rock group, Five Finger Death Punch. I mean, these guys just put out their, I think, 6th album this past week. Out of the last 3-4 albums, each consecutive album has outsold the previous one first week sales, and that's amazing. That's a true testament to artist development, and that's exactly what you want to see in a label, especially.
They're actually releasing 2 records this year and just headlined the Mayhem Festival as an independent artist.
Right, and that's the key to it. Is these guys stay on the road. I'm not the biggest hard rock fan, but I gotta respect the grind, because these guys are on the road 300 days a year. They got a strong management team in Prospect Park. A good distribution partner in Caroline that's committed to them, over more than just one album. It's not a one-album deal. This is a relationship that's been going on for at least 5 years, and it's just a great story. On the urban side, you've got someone like Tyrese. He's a brand. He's a full-fledged entertainer, not only just music but also movies. He put out his independent album, Open Invitation. It scanned over at 75,000 first week, and probably one of the biggest urban independent albums of the year in 2011. He's on his 3rd, 4th single right now, so another great story. And there's a lot out there. It's just a matter of who you got together working with you, picking the right partners, and timing is a big part of it, and also the content. Content is still king. You got to have the hits, to really drive sales nowadays.
Mac Miller is another great story. I mean, I remember when that became the first #1 album to enter the charts at #1 of an independent label in 17 years. I mean, Billboard did a front cover story about it, and then they did a whole piece on Benji, who runs the label, and talked about what the reality of that was, that it wasn't just him coming out, that he had been doing this since he was 13 years old, and they just told the whole story of how he started at parties, and then he started at venues, and then he started building it locally in Philly, and then he started going outside of, and how he built that for 6 years prior to getting to that point. And it was like his, I think, third album that did that. So it's this whole history that you don't see. You just see Mac Miller now with his 2nd album. It's more like his 4th, much like 50 Cent. When 50 Cent broke through a couple years ago, it was his 6th album. You can get his first 5 albums that he owns independently. You can get them on iTunes and Amazon, that aren't the Sony or the Universal records.
Right. I mean, these artists are getting so confident because of their ability to connect with fans and drive business that, believe it, when Mac Miller and Macklemore and Tech Nine, they get multi-million-dollar offers from major labels, and they laugh at these labels. I mean, not disrespectfully, but they say, thank you for your interest, but no thank you.
Because they know.
They're already #1. What is the major going to do? Get them to #2? They're already making millions of dollars off of hundreds of thousands of sales. What do they want to do? Try and make 5% of that? I mean, it's insane.
Jay, it's interesting. The EMD movement, the electronic dance movement, it's an interesting model to follow in terms of this conversation, because There are a lot of people in the dance movement, electronic dance music, that have the same elements going for it that you're speaking about. No one knows, outside of that world really, who Tiesto is. This is, there's not a famous name in the music world, but this is a man who made $23 million last year.
He gets $500,000 to set his laptop off and rock festivals and arenas.
Avicii is just becoming, big now. And what I find interesting about a lot of the big dance artists, they're older people. Avicii's probably the youngest at 24, but he is a rarity in that. Most of them are like in their 30s or 40s that have, built this. And also, I think the electronic dance movement is interesting from this conversation in that when you talk about alternatives, it's the very first movement in music that I can recall in my 35 years in this business that's ever been developed fully by the internet. It came about on the internet, it spread through the internet, and now we're just in the last 2 years seeing it come to, mainstream, so-called mainstream marketplace. But even so, the big stars of it, they're not people who are famously known, but they make huge sums of money, and they have an enormous, enormous audience.
You look at the Electric Daisy Carnival, 300,000
yes.
in Vegas. Now they've branched out to other cities. They're making millions and millions of dollars a day on artists. Like you say, you go down the street, most people wouldn't even know, but people drive from all over the country to go to these concerts. But the experience, and that's really what it is. When you think of your favorite artist, it's really that bonding experience that their music or their art or their personality has moved you to want to be a part of that. You want that energy, whether it's growing up as a kid loving Metallica or NWA or whatever it is, it's affiliating yourself with that act that really gives you a feeling, and that's what it is. And there's no major label that can give you that. It's the power is within you as the artist, producer, manager, and label. You just need to surround yourself with powerful, independent, entrepreneurial-minded people that do what you don't do better than you. So rather than just be around a bunch of people that do the same thing, get your digital person, get your marketing team, get your distribution together, get your publicity, put the team together and then campaign. Like you're running for president, like you're trying to win the Super Bowl, or, whether you're going to war and you want to win.
That's absolutely right. And with regard to the electronic dance music scene that Rich is sharing, I also want to tell you as a creative, as a writer-producer, how much it's affected and influenced my work over the last 15 years traveling to Europe. It is the soundtrack of the world. This is what I found going into stores, being on planes, being in airports. Electronic dance music is, for me, the new jazz. It combines all kinds of polyrhythms, all kinds of polychords, all kinds of incredible technology and editing and programming. I came up with my own sound called West Coast Euro, which is I want to encourage all of you, if you're not into the electronic dance music and that's not really your thing, that's okay. What you should think about is whatever your style of music is, remixes. Because there's that other side of the world that is so brand friendly, so commercial friendly, in terms of ads and ad agencies. And, from the country stars to pop stars, everybody has their remixes. So the electronic dance music came in for a real proper reason. It's hip, it's young, it's cool, and it sounds good, and everybody likes to feel. But it's very, very creative. And some of these folks, Tiesto, Armin van Buuren, Chamberlain, DJ Talla, when you go to the events around the world, you see them. Just like you see Rich Ezra,
they're rock stars.
You see Jesse. You can just go up. This is how I got into it, because it's like, wow, that was like amazing what you did last night. You're like the John Coltrane of turntable or something.
They're like the Rolling Stones.
And it's really a very creative thing.
That's great. Jesse, talk a little bit more about, again, the fact that all these independent tools are readily available, and even if you're working on lower end budgets, not everybody has the Macklemore budget. And again, no one gave Macklemore the money. He went out and earned that and invested in himself. Who has a more vested interest in seeing you succeed than yourself? So by investing in yourself, both by being here and gaining this knowledge, and then implementing that, and hiring specialists to help move and campaign forward, again, there's really all price ranges. It's really about getting it started and getting the ball moving, even if it's just reinvesting as you go.
Absolutely. I mean, once you get your team together, you should really get the ball rolling, because at that point you can get some drivers out there, and the name of the game is leverage. I mean, once you get things started, you get some traction, you can kind of pick and choose which distributor you want to, and say, hey, I have this going on. I'm fully financed. We already have traction. We have radio play. We have digital sales. What's the best deal you can give me? And you can negotiate a sharp fee and go on from there. But one of the options to look at when it comes to financing is Lyric Financial, and that's a company I just joined as VP. You don't have to invest. You don't have to take an advance from a distributor no more, or a publisher. If you're a writer, if you're a producer, you can get advance on your royalties. If you're a label, we're now starting to do label advances. If you have a PRO or a pipeline through a distributor, we can help you guys. So again, that only helps you because if you take an advance from a distributor, you got to recoup that before you see any money.
And what was the name of your company?
Lyric Financial. You can go to lyricfinancial.com to find out more about it, or talk to me afterwards. But that's why I thought this was a great opportunity, because when I was at EMI, this is something that was desperately needed. I didn't even know it existed, and if I knew about it, then we would have taken full advantage, because we have so many labels that took that advance and want to work a second single, but since they have a debit balance with the distributor, they can't really get no money to do what they want to do, which kind of hinders everything, because you're not going to see no money until the album comes out. That's when the bulk of the sales royalties come back in. So there's so many things out there that you can do. Just talk to any of us and ask questions once it's time, because definitely we're here to help you guys and educate you.
Questions?
Question?
You guys keep mentioning Macklemore, who I look up to as an independent artist who's had, I'm sure everybody does, who's had extreme success. And I think it was Jay, but it may have been one of you that said earlier, we're in business for ourselves, but not by ourselves. And you've been kind of touching on the team. But how do you go about, there's so many people out there who really want to take advantage of you and not help you and not really truly back you. How do you go about building that team that is really going to take you where you want to go and be supporting you and your movement, not just trying to get consumer money? Great question.
I think it starts with you knowing exactly what you want to do and where you want to go. One of the things I would recommend in terms of not getting taken advantage of is know what a manager does, okay? Know what they do, and know what you need, okay? Not just to listen to somebody's bullshit, but actually, take them up on it and check them out. Okay? What is their reputation? You can find out anything about anyone today. That's the thing. You can. And, what are their references? Do you know what a manager does? Do you know what the percentages are? Do you know that you never pay a manager a fee to do anything? They should, they earn a percentage of your income. That's
just like an agent.
Just like an agent. You have to be generating income in terms of having a manager. So, that's the thing. You have to get yourself to a certain level before you have something to manage. Anyone who makes promises like that, run.
We're going to be talking about that later with Kevin Lyman and these people that, promote shows. It's really building your brand so you're bringing something to the table that they can tangibly attach to. Just wanting to be on their shows, be on their festivals, get in front of their audience doesn't really bring them anything. So again, you've got to look at, leverage. What you're bringing to the table to create a win-win, especially if they're a bigger entity than you, because you need them a lot more than they need you.
And about that, let's go back to fame or successful. You might not need the most famous music manager. Irving Azoff might not be available to you to manage you today, or to get time with David Geffen as a promoter or manager or mentor, okay? So it could really be your best friend. It doesn't have to be your brother, it doesn't have to be your siblings, but people that have been around you, that have been watching you grow, that went to college with you, they're in high school with you, or whatever, in your band, that they want to be the manager guy, and they want to be the agent guy, and they want to be the online social marketing person. That's a team. And Ted talked about it yesterday, Ted Cohen, when he was saying, Al Jarreau's manager was a bartender in Minneapolis, and that was Patrick Raines, and Patrick Raines became one of the, great managers in manager world. But it was a guy that Al got close to. So you have people around you right now that might not be the most famous people, but they could very well become the most successful people if they're really dialed into your vision, your career, and you have a partnership. And another thing about those partnerships you talk about in terms of getting taken advantage of or being screwed, which is it happens in business, in all businesses, okay? The very good thing to do, like you and I are going to go to Boston, all right? We're going to go to Toledo, Ohio. But we don't have a roadmap. So we're just going to get in the car and just put it and drive, see what happens, right? That doesn't sound like a great road trip. I think we should call AAA, get a map. Just get a map, and we'll, you know, when you and I are arguing and we're going through Barstow or we're in Nashville and we said Toledo, Ohio, we could at least look at the map together and say, didn't we say we were going to Toledo and this was the route? So you should have agreements. You should have very clear contracts or simple deal memos or things that when you're hooked up with that person or that producer or this studio or that manager, just have a deal memo that says, this is what we said to do, and we're both going to sign off on this, and this is our roadmap on our journey toward X. If you don't have that, and you get screwed, you deserved it. You truly did. If you didn't have the sense to at least say, let's have an agreement that we say, I'm going to do this, and you're going to do that, and we'll make it really simple. We don't have to spend a lot of money with attorneys, building a big LLC corporation. Let's just have an agreement that says this is what we're going to do together, and that will help you to not be taken advantage of.
And if you get an agreement that you don't understand, go to California Lawyers for the Arts. That's California Lawyers for the Arts. They have several branches here in the state. They have one in Santa Monica. They will give you time for free if you schedule it with them.
Really?
Yes, to understand what it is that you're signing. Because if somebody gives you a contract, never ever sign a contract without understanding what it is you're signing, and never ever sign a contract unless you have had an attorney explain what it is that you're obligating yourself to do. That way you won't get taken advantage of. That way, as Shelley said, you will know exactly what is expected of you, what is expected of them, what the time parameters are, and so forth.
Does that answer questions?
And you can research a lot of this at home on your own computer.
Oh, I have been, but
Good.
it's good to hear from people who really think.
Another one?
Hi, my name is Andrea. I have a question about brand partnerships. So say you make a list about the brands you want to align yourself with. How do you go about approaching them? What leverage do you have to present to them, and who are the right person to contact, and what's the right kind of proposal to present to secure their funding as a sponsor?
That's a good question. Well, with brand partnerships, I mean, it's tough because you have every artist out there that wants to align themselves with the brand. It's just a matter of, really relationships and having the right partnership or the right connection to even just be presented in front of these people. A lot of that, I would say, have to fall on the business manager or whoever's managing your career, because they're the one that needs to really have that relationship with the right brands to say, hey, I have somebody at Converse that's interested in this, and it's more than just submitting music. They want to know about your whole story. They're going to look at your whole background. Is this brand right? So look at someone like Rick Ross, who had Reebok. Everything was great. He's on top of the world. He's one of the top urban labels right now. One lyric and one song that he's featured on, it's not even his song, killed that deal. So they're going to look at everything, and you got to realize that, hey, if I do move forward with this brand, there's an agreement that we have to sign. There's things I have to really stick to, and if they don't like anything that I do, that could be off the table. So, I mean, it really depends on the manager that you have helping your career out.
Yeah, but as a small independent indie, how do you go about the right person to contact at, say, Coca-Cola? Is it marketing department, or what do you do yourself?
Rich said it so well, and it's really very true. This is a very transparent world today. Everybody is reachable. Donald Trump is reachable. Russell Simmons is reachable. Everybody is reachable. The question is, with what? And how you go about it.
And presenting something that they'll actually respond to.
So it's
bringing value to the table.
It's with what? And somebody said it yesterday. I think it was Ted or maybe Tom Callahan. There's a persistence that's expected and allowed. Okay, and then there's that annoyance. All right. So this is about creating friendships and building long-term relationships. So if you're hassling somebody or stalking somebody or pushing your things so strongly that and so out of touch with them, they're not going to welcome your
I'd like to
content.
just throw one thing because I think it's important. Just so you know, Stephen Mead back here, that's his whole subject. Is exactly what you're talking about. Is exactly what he's going to talk about later on. Exactly that problem, solving that problem. That's where his expertise lies. So I just wanted to throw that in for everybody. If you are trying to figure that out, you may want to make sure you listen to Steve's thing today because he's going to really talk about that stuff.
I would like to add one thing to what you're asking, which is very important. And this was told to me by one of the top music supervisors, but it applies to your question very aptly. Never, ever, ever try to get involved with a brand that you haven't researched thoroughly, that you don't know. Because what you have to realize, and what the music supervisor made me realize, it is not, I repeat, it is not about your music. It is about you serving the needs of that brand. Never forget that, okay? You'll be 50% of the way there if you can get that. It's not about an opportunity for you. It's about, just from a consciousness, what you can do for that brand. That's what they're looking for. So if you can approach it from that angle, I think you'll go much, much further. And the thing about it, the way you can do that is by researching it. Look up, you want to get to Coca-Cola? Look up all the Coke ads. See the kind of sensibility that they're approaching in their advertising. What's the sense that they go for? Is it a positive worldwide message? Is it a, just do it like Nike? What's the sense? Do you have something like that? Do you have music like that? That's the same thing that they told me about music supervision. You never, ever, ever submit music to a television show or a music supervisor that you haven't watched that show. You just don't do that. That's the best way to destroy your relationship with a brand, with a supervisor, right from the get-go. Here's my music, find a place for it in the world. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, that homework is really
important.
And I shared with you about Coca-Cola. I would connect with music dealers, and they're really, really at the epicenter of that particular group and their worldwide campaigns.
That's who they have, is their music client.
And the other thing that you can do, and we're going to come right to your question, the other thing that you can do is take small steps. I mean, brand ambassador, artist ambassador is one of the coolest things in the world, and brands are seeking you. They're actively meeting right now in their think tank, wondering where you are and how they can use your cool music and your cool identity for their company, okay? So this is their hot button. Brand ambassador through music, the coolest channel in the world to connect with humans all around the world. That's what brands are looking for. I did a quick one with Swatch, did a small campaign with Swatch and Phil Collins. He has a foundation called the Little Dreams Foundation, and I produced their band, the Little Dreams Foundation Band. And so I did a deal with Swatch for 10,000 limited edition Phil Collins Little Dreams Band Swatch watches, and it sold out instantly. So you can take, and that gave me credibility to go talk to other watch companies about brand sponsorship. And I actually got one of them to be a private investor in my company. So it was interesting how one went to another. So you can just take small steps. You don't have to be like the Uber ultimate, only voice that Heineken ever uses, or the Reebok or Gap or Banana Republic. You can just suggest a campaign after doing the homework that Rich has, wisely said to do, and say, look, you're into high school kids, and I got this music, and I'd like to play at these 20 high schools, and this is my plan for you, and my music fits right with your demographic, and can I be your brand ambassador on that high school, back to school, cool jeans with 6 pockets, pants thing? And they'd say, we've been looking for you. Where have you been? And you get the gig.
Hey guys, if I could just interject one thing, because right over here, at 3 o'clock today, it didn't make the schedule, but I'm doing a 45-minute session on landing sponsorship and endorsement deals. And I float my entire career, 200 days a year on the road as an independent artist, as a brand ambassador for over a dozen brands. And so I'm going to take us right through the marketing proposal of who to approach, how to approach, why you're approaching it, and how you close that deal. So that will be answered in depth.
3 o'clock today?
3 o'clock today
at the El Portal Theater?
Yeah.
Everybody got that?
That's
3
right.
o'clock today over
There
at
was
the
a
El
question
Portal.
right here with Jay, with this gentleman.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to morph this panel we're all going to go next door. We're not going to bombard the stage because all these gentlemen are going to follow us. We're going to get into the next session at the El Portal room. It's going to be interactive with a couple other players that are going to be joining us on this next panel. So what we're going to do is, rather than talk to these guys now, they're all available to speak after the next session. And rather than spend a lot of time here, we just want to move next door. We're going to continue this vibrant conversation, add a few new players to the play, and really make some great things happen.
Thank you so much.
Give it up
Thanks,
for
guys.
Rich Ezra, Shelly Simon, Jesse Flores. Let's head to the El Portal.